Welcome, everybody. This is Lee Godbold and Gary Snipes with Junk Removal Authority and Nth Zone Moving. Happy to have you guys here where we're going to be discussing today the potential of adding moving over to your junk removal business. So we're not going to go into methods on how to actually do that. We can kind of go into that at a later date. Right now, we're just trying to help you understand, is this an avenue you want to go down? So joining me is an expert in the moving field, Gary Snipes. He's been in the moving business for over 30 years, been in the capacity of owning companies as well as working from some of the large van lines. So he's also the vice president of Nth Zone Moving and is going to be appearing on the Nth Zone channel quite often. So Gary, I know I just did a pretty good introduction, but I appreciate you coming on today. We're going to have a lot of fun going through this PowerPoint.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate that. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for carving out time with us this afternoon and joining in. Appreciate it. See if we can educate you a little bit.
There we go. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to post them. Is it the comments or chat section there, Matt?
You can ask questions in the chat.
All right, so there's a chat section where you can ask questions, and we will get to them just as soon as we can. We'll also be taking Q&A at the very end of the presentation, but please feel free to go ahead and chime in. I do have one question kind of right here at the start, is how soon are you looking to potentially get into the moving business? Many different options, but some of you might already be in it. If you want to let us know that, some of you might be within a few months of potentially doing something, and some of you might be just exploring and you have no timeline on it. So it'd be great if you'd let us know in the comments section. So starting out, we want to talk about why the moving and the junk removal business pairs so well together. Over 75% of junk removal customers are in some stage of transition. So a parent's passed away, they've gotten a divorce, they've changed a job, whatever. What that means is oftentimes a move is imminent. So with junk removal, we're actually preceding the move. So before they've ever booked a moving company, they're booking the junk company to come in and help clean some stuff up. Junk removal companies are used to following processes and procedures. You're used to having to hire general labor. You're used to having to send that labor out on the job and do a good job for customers inside the home and just follow a standard set of processes. Moving is the exact same. There's a lot of the same processes in moving as junk, maybe a few more processes, but moving is just a matter of following a standard process. One of the great things is once you have an established junk removal company, you've got an online presence. So before you're ever ready to add moving to your junk removal business, I'm going to be pretty certain you've reached a certain level where you've got a decent or very good potentially digital presence. So now when you add in moving, you can utilize your website, you'll Google My Business profile, and some of your other digital assets to cross-sell into moving. So that gives you an immediate leg up to somebody that's just coming straight off the street to start a moving business. And 80% of your moves are local. So what we're going through on this presentation is local moves, not interstate moves, but that could be something you'd look to add at a later time.
Good. Thank you, Lee. And just kind of covering some of this as well, as many of you probably already are aware that, you know, a lot of cross-pollination going on in both industries right now. A lot of the movers are looking at adding junk, and the same thing in reverse. A lot of the junk folks are adding moving, and so there's a great cross-pollination going on. Lee kind of touched on that real quickly, that there was a lot of similarities to the both industries and the processes and so forth that are both in place. Obviously, taking care of the customer is number one. But some of the successes, junk loggers, junk and college hunks, obviously the junk lugers, I should say, actually joined in as a mover and then kind of developed into the junk business as well. So they kind of came in from the moving side originally and then developed their junk business. College hunks, same story. Obviously, Got Junk has been in the moving business. Two Men in a Truck are definitely in the junk business now. A couple of locals that JRA customers or Suburban Solutions in Capital City are both in both industries. So there's many, many more, too many to list in a PowerPoint slide, but the point I'm trying to make here is that there is a great opportunity for the junk side industry to definitely get into the moving business.
Yeah, and I do know, like with college hunks who started out in junk and then went into moving, college hunks actually does more in revenue from moving than they do with junk, which is a very kind of interesting statistic, despite the fact they've been doing junk longer.
So some of the things that we're going to talk about today is why moving is more complicated than junk. Some of the bullet points, as you can read off of the screen, is that there's some regulations that are tied to the moving industry that you may not have experienced on the junk side. End zones definitely can help you through some of that, but every state, every city, every community has a different regulation. We do have a list of some of the state regulations and what's required. And then if you get into interstate commerce, which Ali mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you got to get into the Department of Transportation and have a DOT number. But again, we can help you with all of that. We have the information for that. The second thing up is insurance claims. You probably don't have many, if any, insurance claims on the junk side. You're going to have a few on the moving side. What you see and experience probably on the most of the experiences on the junk side is property damage. You're going to have some claims regarding the items that you're moving for the customer. We've got access to help you through all of that. What's the experiences, the filing a claim from the customer side of it, getting that into you, doing the inspections, whether you want to outsource some of that or try to tackle that yourselves. We can certainly help you through that experience as well and teach you how to handle that experience with the claims as they come up as often. And they're not often, but occasionally they come up, so you need something to be aware of. Customer expectations, obviously, on the moving side are going to be very, very high. Handling their junk is one thing, but handling everything they own in their home and moving it, whether it's across town or across the country, the expectations are high, and the stress levels are high usually with the customer as well. They rank moving right up there in the top three on the stress levels with death and divorce. So customers are expecting a high customer experience from their mover that they choose. The booking process, normally, historically, it's sending somebody out inside to the home to do a walkthrough of the items that the customer needs moved. They also have to point out anything that they don't want to have moved. There has been a segue over the last several years to changing that inside sales process to a virtual survey. Again, something that Zone can certainly help anybody with, regardless whether it's inside sales or virtual surveys, but we have the processes in place for either one. Virtual surveys is just what it sounds like. It prevents you from sending somebody across town and visiting with a customer inside their home. It's all done virtually. It's all done video. Unlike now visiting with your doctor, doing so many things now, people are doing it up through video, and the same thing can be done for a quote on a move. The estimates, everything is detailed. Again, as I mentioned, everything is logged on the virtual survey. Everything is recorded, and then everything is itemized. So the estimates are completely itemized. They can be a quote. They can be an open estimate based on the time and materials. It really depends on the state regulations, but there's software that we use that can handle both and all of that. So we're happy to help you with that as well. One of the things on moving is last minute changes do occur. Sometimes escrows don't close, people don't get out of their homes. The renters don't get out of their homes in time. Things like that do occasionally happen. So you got to be a little bit of be able to adapt to some of those changes. You always will have written confirmation and signed agreements from your customers agreeing to the dates that you're going to service them. So if they come at you at the last minute and ask for a date change or a pushback on a date or a service date, obviously you want to try to accommodate them, but you've got control of that because you've had the signed documents that they agreed to the original dates. But some of that happens, and you just have to be adaptable to that. The other thing is you kind of give this some serious consideration moving from junk and adding moving is that you're going to need to hire some knowledgeable people. And it doesn't have to be people that have had 30, 40 years of experience like myself. It can be somebody that's had a year or two of experience being on a local moving company, being on the jobs. But it's so important that you're going to need to have that because the moving is really high touch, obviously. And you've got to learn how to obviously pack. You've got to learn how to blanket wrap these items. You've got to learn how to protect the house and all of these things that you're not necessarily doing on the junk side. So we can help you with all of that. But the thing is that don't try to tackle this with just learning a YouTube video. Go out there and find somebody that is going to have that tenure of experience with the moving, and he's going to be your lead crew guy or maybe your operations person. But that's going to be important that you, as you get into the moving side of this thing, is that you find somebody with that little bit of knowledge so that they can help you with that.
Yeah, excellent points on everything. I want to go a little bit deeper on the regulation side of things. So, this is something that really surprised me, not being in the moving business, coming from junk. Junk is very much, unless you're in the state of New Jersey, it's not really regulated. And what you find in moving, like here in North Carolina is considered to be a regulated state in the moving industry. The One of the state government agencies actually regulate moving. So they tell you what you can and can't charge, what your tariff can be. They give you a maximum tariff that you can actually charge. And there are other states out there that do that as well. They oftentimes the move is regulated, but some states don't regulate what you can charge for packing and valuation insurance. And Gary, if you want to add on anything to that, but the regulation is something you must really got to be aware of. That is definitely not present in junk.
Yeah, and well said, Lee. I mean, the thing is that each state has its own set of regulations. I happen to live in the state of Arizona. It's an unregulated state. You can certainly, if Lee and I wanted to get into the moving business here in the state of Arizona, we could certainly go out and rent a truck this afternoon, put a magnet sign on it, and Lee and Gary movers are in business today. That's how quick it can and happen in the state of Arizona. California, our bordering state here in Arizona, just the complete opposite. You just as Lee mentioned, it's a tariff state, regulation state, meaning that the state provides the moving rates and so forth. It's called a max 4 tariff. You can discount off the tariff, but you can't charge any more than what the state has set as the moving guide and the rates that they charge. So again, we've got the information for you, but again, be aware that each state has its own set of regulations, and that could include the pricing as well.
On the insurance claims, I want to expand a little bit on that. I think everybody understands that where the additional insurance claims come with moving, it's not generally property damage in terms of damaging the house or whatever, or anything on the property. It's damaging the goods that you're actually moving. And with your moving business, when you sell the job, you sell the customer initially, you're going to work to get them to add valuation insurance and or valuation coverage. And then that's done at different levels. So you can have, and Gary, I'll let you expand a little bit on this, but you've got a per pound rate, and then you have what's considered to be full valuation insurance. It's 60 cents per pound is kind of the standard one, or something like that. Isn't that right, Gary?
It is, Lee, and you know what, I'm impressed with how much you've picked up on the moving industry so far in these last few months. So I'm impressed with that. Yep. So you've got a good memory. 60 cents a pound is the standard base rate that movers have to give to a customer at no charge. So each quote, you have to include that. Okay, and really there's nothing to include. It's already comes up and is part of the quote. But 60 cents a pound is just what it sounds like. If you have a 10-pound article that gets damaged, that's valued at $6, regardless if the customer paid $200 for that item. If you damage that item, you're liable for 60 cents per pound. As long as you've got that notated and signed by the customer, that's what your liability ends at, is 60 cents per pound. So again, very minimal type of coverage. You normally want to upsell that in the valuation piece of it. And valuation, just so you know, it is the coverage while it's in your care. So when you're picking up somebody from point A and moving them to point B at destination, the valuation is the coverage while you're handling their goods. Okay, you're not an insurance agent, so we can't call it insurance. We call it valuation in the moving industry. So full value protection is an upsell, and this is something that when you take out a business package, an insurance package, you'll have automatically in your package for full value protection. And this is something that you upsell to the customer, and it's 100% retained revenue. But in the event that something does happen, and let's just go back to that example that I gave of 10 pounds at 60 cents a pound, that's valued at $6 to that customer. So, you know, the point at full value protection is that that customer is covered. If they elect full value protection, they're covered for whatever the replacement cost of that item is today. So if they paid $500 for it 3 years ago, and now that article is $700, and if you damage that and they have full value protection, you're going to be settling that claim for $700. Okay, but again, you're going to take all of the retained revenue. The claims are not going to happen on every single move. So there's a a great revenue stream of valuation. You definitely want to understand that, and I'm happy to help you with that and explain that to you as well as one of the processes.
And my last note I'm going to have on here is customer expectations. Some of you in the previous slide we talked about Big Blue and they're going into moving through the company You Move Me, and they've since divested that. You Move Me still exists; it's still a growing company, but Got Junk no longer is involved with it. Speculation on that, without confirmation, but speculation is that they struggled with how much higher the customer expectation was. Um, People that own Big Blue franchises, they'd gotten to the point where they were pretty happy with their standard of living and how things were going. They went to open up a moving business, and they just weren't probably again speculating, weren't willing to put in the work to really make it happen, and they weren't used to the customer expectation being so much higher. Again, junk is junk. As long as you don't damage the home, for the most part, people are going to be happy. On the other side of things, moving, you have to not only not damage the home, but you have to make sure their items are not damaged in transportation either. So, some operational considerations when you're looking to add on moving to your junk removal company. You're gonna hear us preaching a lot. We want you to treat it as two completely separate businesses. So that means don't use your same junk crew guys on your moving truck. If you have the same warehouse, that's fine. Split it up though, where one side's junk, one side is moving. Don't cross pollinate those two areas. Your trucks, obviously, for the most part, unless you happen to be using a box truck and junk, you're going to be using a dump truck and junk and a box truck in on the moving side. Keep all of that stuff separate. You can share a name. It's great to share a name because then you get a lot of the benefits of having two different services. It's great on your website. You can share a website if it's properly set up to kind of cross sell each service. But people, warehouses, and trucks, you want to separate. Your books, you can keep everything under the same business, but what you'll want to do if you're keeping it under the same business is make sure your account sets it up in such a way that you can tell, all right, my moving business made this amount or lost this amount, my junk business made this amount or lost this amount. And then that way you have a complete picture as to how your business is doing, and one side isn't propping up the deficiencies of the other. So, when is the right time to add moving? All right, so this is an extremely important slide because a lot of people in the junk business probably have not obtained the size they need to get to bring on an additional service. So, as a general rule, you want at least 3 junk removal trucks with a top line revenue of at least 500,000 plus and profits of 100K plus. Once you've obtained those numbers, you then have enough of a cash flow, enough of a positive cash flow coming in that you can support a moving business that's probably going to lose money there at the start. If you guys, many like me and many people, if you bootstrapped your junk removal business, it's easy to do that on one business and get it to success. But to then turn around and get back on the moving truck and keep expenses really low and bootstrap it again, you're going to find to be extremely difficult. You're probably going to get frustrated at it and give up before it can actually be successful. So the best thing to do is to make sure you're completely off the truck on the junk side. Maybe you get on it a little bit in the moving, but not for long. But you're completely off of it on the junk side. The business, your junk business, does not rely on you on the day-to-day basis. You go out of town for 2 weeks, you come back, things are still running very, very smoothly. You are going to need some sort of a higher level position, a supervisor or general manager running your junk company for you to be able to focus your time on the moving, or potentially you go the other direction. You have somebody else focus on moving while you focus on junk. What you're generally going to find is, unless you find a really good person though, and you really incentivize them to take on the moving end, it's going to be harder to take something from scratch and make it successful. You, as the business owner, you've done that once before. You're probably the best person equipped to make it happen again. Whereas you put the more established business in the hands of somebody that can continue following what you've been doing all along to get successful. Dedicated startup capital, we're giving a huge range here between 40 to 100K. The main difference to that is how quickly do you want to try and grow? If you're going to try and grow really, really fast and you're going to spend a lot of extra advertising dollars, you're going to max out your PPC spend, you're going to max out your Yelp spend, and then you're going to go into some branding stuff, maybe radio or something like that. You're going to obviously need to have much more money. The other variable is going to be the truck. So your typical moving truck, if you go out and you get a 26-foot box truck with something like a Kentucky moving body on it, and let's say it's a Freightliner M2, which is a very, very capable moving truck platform. That truck's about $120,000 right now. They're also about 9 months out. That's another consideration. You're going to want to go new if you already own a junk business when you go into moving, though. Remove the headaches and the distraction of equipment that breaks down. You're going to have enough on your plate running two businesses at the same time. So if you don't have the money yet or the credit score or whatever to go new at the moment, then go ahead and continue building up your credit score, building up your cash reserves, and then move into moving later. Again, you should have a successful junk business right now. A few months here or there isn't going to kill you. And the last thing is something you really have to be honest with. You got to really say, hey, do I have the time and am I hungry enough to want to start a new business? Because that's what you're doing when you add up this completely new service, you're starting a new business. So if you've decided, you know what, I've gotten to the point, my junk business is bringing in $1 million a year, $2 million a year top line, and I'm taking home a couple $100,000 or whatever. And you know what? I'm completely happy. I live in the house I want to live in. I got kids. I've got the time to go to their soccer games, baseball games, whatever. And I'm really just enjoying life. And, you know, if my income went up, I really wouldn't change my lifestyle much at all. I'm just happy where I am. You're not going to want to add this additional business. If you're still very, very hungry though, and you want the challenge of building up another company and you haven't achieved whatever your goals are, then adding a new service could be for you. But that's a question you've got to make sure you ask yourself.
Good, Lee, and you know that point you just made about being hungry. You know, it is something that's going to be really important to think about and think through on that because you know you all of you are in markets. You see the movers in your communities. You see some of the big boys there, and you think, gosh, you know, I'd love to be in that position where I had a big moving company. But just keep in mind that all those big moving companies that you've noticed, and as you really start to notice now, as you start to really consider whether I want to add moving, you'll start to notice these moving companies and these moving trucks in your streets and your neighborhoods and so forth much more now. But one of the things that you need to consider is that all those big moving companies, they all started small. So no big moving company started huge. So and I've been in this thing for over 40 years, and so let me tell you that you know starting with a truck or two or three or whatever your community can support, that's the way you want to start. You don't want to overextend yourself. You want to start reasonable. You don't want to get out there to a platform where you can't control it. Some of the next two slides we're going to talk about is the market research that's involved in starting a moving company. So, you know, obviously doing the research before you get really active in laying down a lot of numbers is starting to just find out what the competition would be like in your community. So you want to find, you know, do a Google search and just put in local movers in Pittsburgh or wherever you may be, and you know, pull up the number of movers, and then from that, kind of do a you know, filter that list down, and because you'll recognize some of those names. You've seen their trucks before, you've seen some of their ads possibly, but you'll start to see, okay, well, you know, there might be 30 movers or 15 movers in your community. So, you know, 10 of those might be have 75% of the market share, okay? You'll want to really concentrate on the ones that have the market share. There's always going to be, you know, ABC Moving Company that has one truck and really is not going to be that impactful in the business in your community. You're going to want to take a look at the larger players that have been established for a while, and then you're going to want to dive into contacting those companies just as a random customer and say, hey, by the you know, I'm looking to move from this zip code to this zip code within a 50-mile radius of you know the origin to destination. How much would you charge for that? I've got a 3-bedroom house, and they'll qualify you while they've got you on the phone and ask you certain questions and so forth. And they'll ballpark an estimate for you right on the phone if that's what you're interested in. Or you can do this even online for most moving companies. Most moving companies now have websites that support a ballpark quote. So, but you want to do the research. The point is do the research and keep notes of what you're finding out. So if ABC Moving says, hey, 2 men in a van, It's estimated at 6 hours to move you from origin to destination, and we charge $150 an hour for that, and it's $900. You want to note ABC Moving, 6 hours they're estimating this, and it's $900. And the next call that you make or the next visit to the website, you want to log in what they're going to charge you. You're going to find that the 10 or 15, whatever the number of moving companies that you research, you're going to find that the ones that are all have been established for a while, they're all going to be within 5 to 10% of pricing of one another. And pricing could vary, by the way, by the date that you are wanting to move. Some certain dates like Fridays and Mondays are usually a hot day for a moving company. People want to use that weekend to get settled in, and they want to move on a Friday, or they want to take that Monday off and start continue to unpack and that type of thing. So you want to definitely ask them, if I change dates, does the pricing change? The time of the year can change it as well. We have what we call a peak season in the moving business, and usually that's the middle part of May or the last part of May, and runs through the first week of September. And pricing can certainly escalate during those times, as well as at the ends of the month. And another peak portion of that is at the ends of the month. Very, very active and moving. So you're going to want to do the research. You're going to want to find out what their Yelp ads are, what the people are telling them about their testimonials of their experience. You're going to want to find out just as much information as you can. One of the things that you're going to be really important that you do is finding out where you're going to want to locate at. Because as you start to lay down a foundation, and you want to find, and you have a certain clientele that you want to go after, and if that's in the downtown portion of your city, or if that's on the outskirts of your city, you're going to want to have your physical address as close to that area as you possibly can, because as we all know now, Google knows everything about us, right? So when a customer pulls up and they do a search for a moving company, if you've got yourself out in Timbuktu, out in the outskirts, and this customer is in downtown, they're not going to find you as easily unless they're doing an exact search for you. So you want to make sure that you locate yourself where you want to do business at. Okay, that's really critical. But
And
my closing
that
point on that, Lee, and I'm sorry, I'll just say is there's a lot of due diligence that's involved in this thing. You got to take the time. You got to go through that exercise to be prepared.
Yeah, and that last tip, Gary, is an excellent tip. That even applies to your junk removal company. If you can get located in the area where you want to do the majority of your business, or is where your key clients are really located, your key customer, then that location is going to help you appear better on the map pack with Google, which is going to lead to a lot more jobs. Now, I believe we do have a question. What you got there, Neb?
So I've got one here from Joel, and he's asked how seasonal is moving.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll fill that lead. And it's seasonal. So, definitely, as I said, now let me just kind of back up on that. The pandemic has really thrown the moving industry into kind of a lopsided. We used to have this huge bell curve in the industry from, again, peak season running late May through the first week of September, mid of September. And usually that's always been driven by that's when the kids are out of school, and people want to move when their kids are out of school. They don't want to pull them from a school network or their community and put them into a new school district in the middle of the school year if they can avoid it. So they always seem to wait if they can during the summertime. Weather's better, that type of thing. So it's always been a bell curve for that summer months. Pandemic threw that completely. We have not in the moving industry. We have not had a slowdown in 2 years. This is an extremely good time to be in the moving business. The rates are at an all-time high. Services at an all-time demand. It's a really good time to do this. But right now, we don't really know. I think we're through. CDC yesterday came out and said that we're through with the pandemic, but who knows where all of this may go. But the last 2 years, we really haven't had the bell curve. So normally we see that peak seasons in the summer months. But this coming summer, I'm already told through my contacts in the industry that people are already booking for June, July, and August in the moving industry. So the demand is extremely high, and we'll talk more about that here in a second as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point you made about the school system stuff. Because again, I'm getting up to speed on the moving industry, but I just wouldn't have thought of that. It makes complete sense. On the junk side of things, we're normally pretty busy from mid March through the end of October, mainly because of weather. With the moving side, though, with the school system changes and all, I can definitely see where it's more of a tighter busy season. Okay, so when is the wrong time to add? Do we have any other questions there, Neb? Okay, excellent. So, guys, if you got any questions at all, feel that. That was an excellent question, by the way, on the seasonality. So, when is the wrong time to add moving to your junk removal company? If you're still in the truck, don't even think about it. If you don't have enough startup capital, if you're not in that $40,000 to $100,000 range, you need to wait, get the capital first, and let's do this right. And the second item that's listed right here is if your motivation is to add moving simply to increase your revenue because your junk removal business is struggling, you need to work on your junk removal business first, because all you're going to do is you're going to multiply your problems by adding in another service, because now you're going to be splitting your advertising between two services. So if you already were tight on your income on the junk side, now you're trying to take the same budget and sell two services. You're not going to do well with either one. The same thing with people. You're going to be having guys that are on your junk trucks because your junk business isn't doing great. You're going to also put them on your move trucks. Well, now those guys, they're going to be on the move trucks, or your move guys are going to be in your junk trucks, and they're never going to want to go back to the moving truck because junk removal is much harder physically. Excuse me, the other way around. Moving is harder physically than junk removal, because with junk, once you load the truck, your next step for the most part is to take it off to a location where you hit a button, it dumps, and you unload. With moving, you're not even halfway through once you load the vehicle. You got to drive to the location, and then the next time you're taking stuff up the stairs rather than down. So focus your attention on getting your junk business right when you're off the truck, when you've got at least three trucks, 500K plus top line, 100K plus bottom line. Then you could be ready to actually move into the moving space. So, what are some common alternatives to the moving business when you're looking to expand your junk removal company? There's more than this, but these are the top two. So, most people look at dumpster rental, they think it's an excellent add on to the junk business. And anybody that's ever talked to me about the dumpster business will know that I always say the dumpster business is a great business to be in, but it's very capital intensive, and you have to get a couple hundred cans really before you're at a point where you're actually making a pretty good income. And what happens is when you're building up that dumpster company, every time you turn around, you're buying more cans, you're buying more trucks. The main thing, that's not actually my biggest problem with the dumpster business, though, when you're adding it on the junk. My largest issue with the dumpster business when you're adding it onto junk is oftentimes it's an either or decision instead of an add-on service. So you're either going to get junk or you're going to rent a dumpster. With moving, it's generally an add-on. You can do junk, and you probably are also going to need moving, or the other way around. So it's a much better time, or they're much better services in terms of upselling each other than dumpsters is, which is often just a decision between one or the other. The other way of expanding your company is geographically. Now, with Junk Doctors in North Carolina, we have three locations. We'll never expand outside of the state of North Carolina because we started JRA. But in North Carolina, we're in Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greensboro. All three of those locations are about 2.5 hours apart. They get the farthest is Raleigh to Charlotte, which is about 2.5 hours. Greensboro is kind of in the middle. Geographical expansion works, but it does bring its own set of challenges. You have multiple office spaces or warehouse spaces. You are hiring people that are hours away. Your drive time that you're going to spend on the road going to these locations is going to be higher. It's a little bit more difficult, though it's certainly possible if done right, but it is a little more difficult to monitor how your business is doing, to make sure your trucks are being taken care of and your customers are being taken care of, and so on and so forth. That's the reason oftentimes adding an additional service that's an upsell is better than geographical expansion. So, Gary, now we get to talk about the fun stuff, which is how much money a moving business can actually make.
Yeah. Well, and again, Lee gave you that swing as far as the startup capital of $40,000 to $100,000. So one of the things in this slide, we'll walk through this a little bit. And so obviously the first bullet point up is it varies by market and by the operator. So one of the things that we talked about is doing your research, finding out what your competitors are. One of the things that kind of backing up to the previous slide that Lee hit on is that the moving industry really expanded from right post World War II. That's when things were really happening for the moving industry. And those people that were in the business in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and so forth, they're retiring out or have retired out of those businesses. The new blood now is coming into the moving industry. So you as a savvy entrepreneur, business owner in the junk side, really good time to look seriously at joining the moving industry. And we'll talk more about that. But the startup cost, Lee hit 40,000 to 100,000, depending on what you're looking for and how you wanted to operate to get started. One operator might make it work in the market where the other one fails. Again, we talked about how hungry you have to be. All right, so you've got to be focused. You got to do your due diligence. We can help you with that. We have an operations manual that we certainly can help you through some of these processes, from anything from writing a business plan to purchasing the equipment and so forth. So hiring staff, training staff, all of that is in our operations manual, and certainly something that we'll be releasing more videos on through the Ents channel as well. So stay positioned for that. Again, 10%, 10 to 20% is the net for moving companies. This is, again, we're kind of establishing this on the sweat equity that the owner wants to put in, right? So again, it comes down to how do I want to participate in this thing? Lee said earlier that maybe the owner gets out of the junk side and puts that in the hands of more of a general manager or supervisor type role, and then the owner kind of focuses his attention or her attention on the junks or on the moving side, and maybe gets on the truck for a little while. And I really support that idea. Because that's how I was trained. That's how my dad started me, is getting involved in the basics of the industry. I'm a second generation mover. I've been in the industry all my life. And, learning, even if you spent a month on the truck or 2 months on the truck as an owner, it would give you a wide range of visual of really what the day-to-day looks like out there. So I really recommend that you take that into serious consideration. But the revenues, the first year, about 150 to $200,000 is normal, and I've got a breakdown on how these numbers have arrived. So if anybody wants to see some of the backup to this, you can just drop me a comment or shoot me an email or however you want to contact me, and I'd be happy to provide some of this information to you. And there's a formula that I use, and it was all based on local moving. And these are numbers that you're looking at in year 1 through year 5. These are numbers that are just based on continual growth. These numbers didn't add in services like storage, valuation, automobile shipping, packing materials. These were just real low line revenue numbers of just providing local move services. So as you grow into the industry and you start to add these other services, your revenues could certainly go much higher than what we're looking at, that from year 1 to year 5 and beyond, for that matter. Moving companies that are in a larger market, a million and a half plus population, it's not uncommon for these companies to be doing, $2, $3, $4, $5 million. I just left the largest agency moving company in the state of Arizona, and they did $31 million last year in 2021. So it's really about where you want to drive this thing to, and Zone is happy to help you with all of that. So there's so much more detail on it, but feel free to reach out to me. Happy to put the backup in place for you.
Yeah, one of the neat things to me on the moving side of things is all the different revenue generators, or the additional revenue generators that the moving business has that the junk business doesn't necessarily have. So you don't have to add all these things all at once. One of the things you mentioned was storage. Storage is very, very neat. A lot of junk removal entrepreneurs, service business entrepreneurs, are interested in real estate. Well, on the storage end of things, that's a great way of starting to expand into real estate through utilizing your warehouse for stackable storage space. And a lot of customers, obviously, that are moving need storage. What do you estimate the percentage to be of local move customers that use storage, Gary?
Yeah, it's right around 25 to 30% of the base, and especially today, that number is growing, that need storage, because I'll just speak about Arizona. Great state, a lot of Californians moving in here, a lot of other people moving into the state of Arizona, but housing demand is at an all-time high in the state of Arizona. It's probably at an all-time high pretty much everywhere across the country, right? I think with the exception of California, everybody's getting more and more people moving in and staying in their states, and housing is critical. So because of that, the house sells quickly, and they haven't found a home, a destination yet. So gosh, what do I got to do? I got to find storage. I got to have this interim spot to put my goods. So if you can add storage eventually, you don't have to do it right off the bat. I recommend, especially if you're starting up, to ease into that. And my business model will show you how that looks. So again, you can start this moving company from your home office. You don't have to have brick and mortar to start. You don't have to do that to get going. You can add these services, but you will eventually want to add these services because there's just too much margin in storage, first of all, not to have that. I mentioned a minute ago about the demand for moving is at an all-time high. And we know the housing market has been crazy. People and the pandemic has added so much to this. People are moving now more than ever because they need larger homes because they're working from home. They need a home office and so forth. Or maybe, their parents have decided that, hey, I'm going to bring mom and dad in to live with us. Or maybe their adult children have to come back into the house for whatever particular reason. So a lot of upsizing is going on. And then the same thing is downsizing. They don't want that big house anymore. They don't need it. So they want to get out of that big house and downsize a little bit. So there's a lot of reasons that are going on for moving, but it has been extremely busy. Movers are not, it's not uncommon to reach out to a mover and find out that they're booked out 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. Again, your market research, that's one of the questions that you're going to want to ask is, how far out I'm thinking of moving the first part of June, or middle of May, or whatever it may be. Ask those questions, let them answer those for you, and then again, take notes on that because that's going to be extremely part of your finding out of whether moving is something that you're going to want to add.
All right. So now we get into, or we just mentioned the sales figures. How do we actually get those moving job leads? Well, some of the stuff is similar to junk. Your digital presence between Google Ads, SEO, website, very similar to junk. The networking, it's just as it's actually probably even maybe more important in moving than it is in junk. So both are very, very important in both businesses. It's the same type of people you're going to target: your realtors, retirement communities, the self-storage managers, and property managers. And then Gary, you've got leads groups and kind of buying leads here. Is that through Thumbtack and Home Advisor, or are there some other avenues out there for purchasing
Yep.
leads?
Yeah. So Angie's List, Thumbtack, all of those you can buy leads. You can certainly is another great resource for movers is the direct mail campaigns is the part of that, and you can buy the MLS listings, which is the multiple listing services in your market. You buy those through an aggregator, and they'll sell you those leads, and you can filter those down by zip code. So you don't, if you were in Denver, Colorado, you don't have to buy the entire population of every MLS listing in the greater Denver area. You can filter that by zip code. You can filter it by the square footage of the homes that you want to move. You can filter it by the price that they've got it listed by. So there's a number of ways that you can filter those lists, but it's a great target market to do a direct mail campaign. Again, postcards are very common used in the moving industry for generating leads. Leads groups, as we mentioned, leads groups are the Angies and the Thumbtacks. But the other big piece of this is that you know you want to be professional, right? So you want to have a beautiful website. You want to have that you're a member of the BBB or the Chamber of Commerce or both. If you have other affiliations that you belong to, you want to post those on your website because people recognize those names, and people they want to do business with professionals. So if you're a BBB member and you've got a plus rating, you're going to want to post that on your website because that just elevates you up to a higher standard, and people want to be their move to be handled by somebody that knows the industry. If you belong to a state association, a moving association, you want to post that association, California Moving and Storage Association, CMSA, or if you belong to the National Association, it's the American Moving and Storage Association, but you want to post those things on your website. But the other part of the leads groups are things like Business Clubs of America or BNI or both. And when you if you just do a quick Google search and just put in local leads groups, they'll come up. They'll come up quickly and they'll show you what's close to you because these have chapters all across the communities. You don't have to go from 30 miles to get to a group. And a lot of these now are obviously Zoom meetings or they're virtual meetings. And so you don't even have to necessarily attend some of these. But my final point on joining organizations is that you'll only get out of that what you put into it. So you cannot just join the BBB and not ever go to a meeting or a function. You cannot belong to BNI, a chapter of BNI, and never attend a meeting. You've got to participate. That's how it works. Leads referral groups like BNI or BCA, Business Clubs of America, they expect you to come back with referrals as well. Hey, I just moved somebody that needs, whatever it may be, a car rental company, whatever it could be. So these are companies that are in the business, or these leads groups are in the business of sharing leads. And so you definitely want to participate in that.
Yeah, BNI is great on the junk side as well as the moving because most home service businesses, you're doing work for people. When you're doing work for people at people's homes, a lot of times they're getting ready to sell. Not always, but a lot of times. So it's a really great way of getting those referrals for sure. BNI is pretty strict too. If you're not a member of your local BNI chapter, generally they only allow you to miss like 2 meetings a year, and you might can miss 2 and then have somebody else sub in for another 2. But they expect you to attend, and you're expected to bring a minimum amount of referrals over a period of time also. On the mail campaigns side of things, one of the neat things about the moving industry is it is a bit less reliant on the digital presence as junk is. Mail campaigns on the junk side, we found to be marginally effective. You get work, but it's expensive enough that oftentimes it's not really worth it. And it's hard to really narrow down exactly who you want to send it to. Obviously, with moving, it becomes much easier because you're targeting people that have just listed their home for sale. There are a lot of moving companies out there. There's at least one I know of that does a little over $6 million a year in revenue in the Southeast United States that has a website that ranks okay, but the only paid advertising they do is direct mail. And what he loves about it is he says, you know what, if I want to make X amount more money, then we spend X amount more dollars on direct mail, and we get this pretty even correlation between success. It's less reliant on Google. The junk side, we're very, very reliant on Google often to get the majority of our work. With moving, if you're using direct mail, you are able to spread some of that risk out to a few different mediums.
One of the
Trust-based
things,
marketing.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just was going to just add to your point. The postcard, it's a postcard normally is a direct mail piece. And so the postcard, you could split it in 2. You could have the junk side on one half of the card and the moving offer on the second half of the card. And because again, when people are looking for services, and Lee, you hit on this earlier, if they call you on the junk side and you say, oh, by the way, we have a sister company called ABC Moving that also does moving. If you need moving services, we also offer that as well. People love to hear that. They don't want to go out and start shopping again if they've got a junk company that they're talking to and that junk company offers moving services. Oh my God, I love that idea. It's great. You mean you can handle my move as well? And cross reference. So the moving side, they come in, and your receptionist, the person who's answering your phone, inside sales, whoever it may be. Oh, by the way, we offer junk removal. Do you need anything removed prior to your move? Do you need to show your house a little bit better, clear out your house, declutter your house? We also offer junk removal. So it's just a natural transition. And that direct mail piece, again, you're not duplicating cards. You can split the card and offer both services. So just something to think about.
Excellent stuff there. And to add on to what Gary was talking about, you can actually create a rebate program. So if they're booking a junk removal job, you can let them know, hey, if you go ahead and book your move now, we'll offer you a $200 rebate off of your junk removal job once your move closes. So at the time of your move being over, we'll offer back a $200 rebate going towards your moving cost if you go ahead and book that appointment now. And that's a way of going ahead and get them to commit to getting on the calendar. And then they don't want to give up that $200 later on by going with another company. A lot of moving companies don't do yard signs. They don't do sticky notes and door hangers anymore. They used to. Some of them have just gotten lazy over time. Junk companies do a really, really good job now with yard signs, sticky notes. When you move a customer or you do your junk, removal at a customer's house, you have those sticky notes. You go around and you put them on the back side of the mailbox, so the back of the mailbox post, and then the mailman never sees it. But the customer does. They take that and they have your information. So if you're in the habit of doing that, then you just add the moving on to those same sticky notes and yard signs. So cross-selling between the two industries. We mentioned doing the rebate because junk removal often precedes moving. And ask customers questions also when you're booking the junk removal job. Why are you getting junk removal? Do you plan on moving soon? If so, how far out? And by the way, we offer moving. You want to email and mail past customers from your list. So if you're going to do this, use that email list and that mailing list to let people know you now offer moving. Include a little coupon in with that piece. And ask moving customers also if they're going to need junk removal. Oftentimes there's some items left over after the move. Your junk removal company can swing by, pick those up, and both companies do well, and the customer's super happy. They didn't have to call multiple people out. And you can sell the junk removal for leftover items after the move. That's part of the cross sale. Once the move's over, all right, now we have the junk removal opportunity for you.
All right, so add-ons. We talked about this earlier, but just to kind of recap some of this again. So, again, you can start small. Don't be afraid to start small. If you want to, start out of your home office, to me, that's even fine with that, and then work yourself up to brick and mortar. But again, you in all likelihood, you're going to offer when you first start a moving company. If you're really coming out of the box with it, you're going to offer local moving. Okay, and a local move is within a 50-mile radius of the origin zip code to the destination zip code. So local moving is the basis for starting a moving company, okay? And then as you kind of grow, into your shoes into the moving industry and start to understand it a little bit better, then you're going to start adding services. And some of the services that we mentioned in this slide are moving supplies. So everybody needs moving boxes and tape and packing paper and bubble pack and all of the things that movers normally have. So you're going to want to have an inventory of supplies because the margins, first of all, the margins on moving cartons and supplies is extremely high. So you'll definitely want to, eventually go into that. If not right from the start, moving supplies doesn't take a lot of capital. So you'll definitely want to do that. Great margins. Kind of tied to moving supplies is the packing. So you'll see that kind of lower into that slide, the packing. So packing services. This is where you not just move the customer, but they say, "Hey, can you pack me, or would you like?" You're going to offer packing services. We also offer packing services. I'd love to include that into your quote. And then if you decide to do your own packing or partial of it, we'll just back those charges off. But that's the labor to come into somebody's home and pack their dishes, pack their clothes, pack their belongings in cartons, certain size of cartons. There's a carton for every need throughout the home: wardrobes, mirror cartons, flat screen television cartons, and so forth. So all of that is an additional service, additional revenue streams. Storage, we talked about the storage, great margins in storage, and a great demand for storage as well. So storage is definitely something that you'll want to grow into. We talked about the valuation. This is the coverage while it's in your care. And by the way, if you brought a shipment into storage, they have to put valuation on it while it's in storage. The move valuation does not include the storage valuation. So another revenue stream, if the shipment, the move came into storage, is the valuation tied to that. And we're not talking about 30 or 40, $50. We're talking about hundreds of dollars involved in valuation on each move, sometimes even north of hundreds of dollars. Cleaning services, again, as I mentioned, I think a slide or two ago, anytime that you can be a concierge and say, we offer junk, we offer moving, I can tie you up with a cleaning service. And maybe that's somebody, maybe you don't own that cleaning service, but that's a referral for your BNI or your BCA or whoever you're tied to in your leads groups. Anytime that you can come and be a one-stop shop for a customer, you've got that customer on the phone or you're chatting with that customer, and you say, oh, by the way, would it help if I had a cleaning service for you that you could get a quote for on your move? And a lot of the cleaning services now, if you just tell them, well, it's an 1,800 square foot home, it's a ranch house, it doesn't have a second floor or anything, they'll tell you 1,800 square feet up to 1,800 square feet is $250 to clean that house. Okay, 1801 to 2200, it's $290 to clean that house. So a lot of these cleaning companies have a flat rate. So if you partner with one of them and you can add these topics to your discussion, the people are normally going to say, "Wow, you can team me up with a cleaning company. That's once you get everything out of the house, then my wife wouldn't have to do all of that on her own. Be great to do that, or my husband wouldn't have to do that." On my case, my wife says, "You do the cleaning, right, Gary? You're moving me. I want you to clean the house as well." So anytime you can bundle up these services, it's a great opportunity to close more business. Interstate moves. Again, we talked a little bit about starting small, doing these local moves within a 50-mile radius. You're definitely going to want to add into a larger service radius eventually. And don't necessarily do that from the beginning. Intra-state moves are where the move is happening within the state. And just say that you're here in Arizona and that you need to move from Tucson to Phoenix. Well, that's about 100 miles, okay? And that's over a local move because a local move historically is within a 50-mile radius. So you can build a tariff, and EndzZone can help you build your tariff of rates, okay? And for these moves that go over a local move or over 50 miles. And then maybe some of you might be close to state lines. And so you have customers that want to move on an interstate move. And then, you've got to go through the DOT and get a DOT number, Department of Transportation number, and be licensed to be able to handle that. But again, a different set of transportation rates are involved in an interstate move, and we can help you with that. But my recommendation on interstate moves is to start slow. As you are going to start with a truck or two or three, whatever the case may be, you don't want to tie up one of those high dollar trucks on moving somebody 1,000 miles and losing that truck for a week or two to service that customer when you could have 5, 6, 7, 8 local moves in that same period of time that you could be using that truck for. So you got to, again, my recommendation is that you start small, or start within a small radius, I should say, if you're going to do interstate moves. Maybe keep that to a 500 or 600 mile radius to start with from your home office. And then as you start to understand that business and get more comfortable with it, and you start adding tractors and trailers, semis, over-the-road drivers. We can talk about what that all means in interstate business and van line affiliations and so forth as well. So start small, learn your market, grow into your shoes, but bundle up as much as you can. And again, EndzZone is here to help you with any of that.
Very good. So kind of just packaging everything all together and summarizing what we've covered. Moving is not necessarily more difficult than junk, but it's definitely more complicated. There's more moving pieces. Now, what that means, even though there's more moving pieces, is there's also more opportunity. There's more upsell opportunities in terms of the packing materials and the valuation insurance and storage and the things that Gary just covered. The moving also has an excellent top line potential with a bottom line comparable to junk once you're established. So 10 to 20%, that's pretty common in the junk removal space. People shoot for a 20% net once they're established. 15 to 20% is kind of where you'd love to be. Some are a little lower than that. Some are a little bit above. It's very, very similar. Now, if you add in the interstate piece, your margins will come down. The interstate is a much higher top line. So your overall profits are higher, but your margins will start to kind of creep down. But for local movings, 10 to 20% is pretty common, or is a figure a lot of moving companies are able to hit. And we want you to really think like an investor here. So anytime you open up a second business, you're becoming a bit more of an investor than an active party in it. It's going to be impossible if you're shouldering 40% or 80% of the responsibility in your junk business. There's no way you're going to be able to add in another business and shoulder the same 80% in that new business, at least not long term. It's not sustainable. So you need to start thinking like Warren Buffett and some of these other guys that are kind of investors in these companies. They pick good people, they establish good processes, and then they've got checks and balances in place to make sure that their good people are following their good processes. And then the companies grow and everybody kind of accomplishes the goals that they really set out to accomplish. So I'd like to open it up right now to a little bit of some Q&A. If you guys have any questions at all that we haven't covered already, please post them in the comments. While we're waiting on those questions to come in, if you want to get in touch with Jerry's sister company, EndzZone Moving, The phone number is listed at the bottom left, 984-240-7118. You can also go to moving.endzone.com, right, Matt? Moving.endzone.com. And feel free to shoot Gary an email at gary@nthzone.com. Do we have any questions to cover here, or have we covered pretty much everything? Very good. Gary, you got any last minute comments to add while we maybe wait on one or two questions to come in, or?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to add a couple of things. One of the things too that adding services, and I kind of skipped over this. Wasn't included in the slide, but I do want to mention it is auto shipping. As you are, remember we talked a little bit about bundling services, cleaning, packing, whatever it may be. The other thing that you're going to hear a lot about if you get into the moving business is that customers are going to ask you, says, "Can you take care of my car? Can you take care of my cars?" So you do not have to be in the auto shipping business to take care of a customer's car. You simply are a broker for that. And I'll teach you how to do that as part of our procedures as well, and learning how to quote a car, add the margin to the car. And it's simply taking the information of what kind of car, the make, model, obviously the origin and destination, and when the customer wants it moved, and turning that over to a car, shipping car company, and getting a quote for it, and then adding your margin and booking that car. It's very simple, but a great revenue stream for movers as well. But I'm happy to help in any of that, Lee. We're excited about this. We think it's a great opportunity for the junk folks to really stop and consider adding moving. We painted the picture for you that the demand is at an all-time high for movers, right? Big demand, higher than it's ever been, okay? Movers are coming into action more and more, so don't miss this window of opportunity. If you really want to give us some serious consideration, right now is the time. So if there's anything that we can help with, we're here. We've got lots of time to help you with these certain questions that you're going to have, and that's what we're here to do. So feel free to reach me anytime.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in and watching this. Hope you found it to be very helpful. Again, I'm Lee Godbold with Junk Removal Authority, Mr. Gary Snipes with Nth Zone, where we help junk removal business owners and moving business owners make more money and live a better life. See you next time.
Thanks again. Have a great day.